We are back for yet another week of the CBB Central podcast, and Brad, that was a pretty fantastic week of college basketball, if I do say so myself. To me, that was what a week of college basketball was all about. There was upsets, there was things you didn't expect, there was great games, overtime games, blowouts that you didn't expect. I mean, top to bottom, just a great slate of hoops.
Absolutely. I mean, the Virginia Duke game, I thought it lived up to the hype yesterday. Auburn and Kentucky was also a great game. Those were the two marquee games. They had other great games during the week. I thought it was a great week. I watched a ton of basketball on Saturday, which is always the dream. And we only have 6 Saturdays left, maybe 7 Saturdays left, so we got to make the most of those.
Yeah, I spent a large portion of my Saturday just sitting alone watching basketball, and it was quite divine. Spent a little bit of time this week, Brad, at Assembly Hall. Was on the road with Northwestern women's basketball. It was a very fun trip, very exciting trip. Cats got a dub. First time a team had beaten Indiana women's basketball in Assembly Hall in over a year. So if you care about those things, go ahead. But I mean, it was so cool to walk in there, shoot around, and you feel the history in that place. It was kind of like going to Fenway as a baseball fan, where you just walk in, you just understand the history about it. And I can't imagine being there when it's packed, because that place holds 17,000, and I just do not know how, because it is just not that big. Like, it is tight. And so, I mean, I can't imagine being there for a game like that. So just my question before we get into it, what's the coolest arena you've been to, and what's the craziest atmosphere at a basketball game you've ever been a part of?
So I haven't been to many arenas. I've been to Mohegan Sun, right? I've been to the Dunk. I've been to the Ryan Center, which is URI. I've been to Bryant's Arena, not for a game. I mean, that's a high school gym. And then I went to the NCAA tournament at the Garden in Boston, and that's it. I think that's 4 arenas. So I'm not very well traveled. I think best atmosphere might have been Villanova St. Mary's NCAA tournament. I was a freshman in high school, so that was like 10 years ago at the Dunk. St. Mary's pulled off the upset. That was before that they were really like a mid-major power brand. That they were kind of just like an ordinary mid-major team. And I think the most memorable thing, not game related, was like Villanova had like 50 people in their band, and they all set up, and it looked very professional. And St. Mary's had like 8 people, and then they had like one person for each instrument, like off in a little corner. Just kind of showed the disparity there.
Yeah, I mean, Assembly Hall is going to take the cake for me in terms of coolest arena I've been to. I mean, I've actually checked off a bunch in the last couple of years. Obviously, New Welsh Ryan is really cool. I've been to Loyola. I've been to DePaul's new arena. I've been to the Carrier Dome. I've been to Mohegan Sun for games. I've been to a bunch of mid-majors in the Northeast I've tripped to. I was at Marquette's old arena, so we had like the NBA arena last year for a Bucks game. I don't know if that counts. Obviously now Assembly Hall for a women's game. I've been to Florida's arena for a women's game. Assembly Hall definitely took the cake. In terms of atmosphere, this is really tough because I've got a few I'm kind of working through. So one option is Siena home game in the MAC tournament against Monmouth in either the MAC championship game when over half of Siena student body was there, or the game before against Monmouth where like the crowd wasn't that great, but it was just so special because of the way the game was playing out. Like Nico Clarith went nuts. So those two are in the mix. There's Loyola, Nevada. That was a crazy atmosphere just because it was like Loyola's like official indoctrination on campus to being a basketball school, if that makes sense. Because like they hadn't really had a big home game since the run, and for them to turn out the way they did and like just go wild for 2+ hours, even though they were losing, was a really cool atmosphere. The Dome against Buffalo was very cool. I feel like I'm missing one. Oh, Duke URI at Mohegan Sun was a very interesting and fun atmosphere. A couple years back. I feel like I'm definitely missing something, but I feel like that's the short list for me.
Yeah, so you're definitely more well-traveled than I am. I mean, just a couple of states for me. But yeah, I don't have like a burning desire or anything to go to like a random mid-major game, because I feel like if I do that, I'm missing a better game on TV. Like that's why like last year I didn't go to any Bryant games, even though I was up there, because I don't know what day the next plays, but like a Thursday night. So like if I'm gonna stay up there, let's say class got out at 3:00, I have to stay there like 4 more hours, and then watch a sub 300 ranked Bryant team play like Wagner, in like a high school gym, and then drive back, and I've missed the 7:00 time slot and then part of the 9:00 time slot. So it just never made a ton of sense for me in terms of maximizing like the amount of relevant games I saw.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, like, for me, I only wind up like I wind up at Siena games. Like that's a fanhood thing. Like it doesn't matter if they were in the MAC, if they were playing a G2 team and Duke Kentucky was on that night. Like I'd be at Siena game. Like that's just kind of how it is as a fan growing up. And then I usually, if I can get to a Loyola game because they're good now, then I'll do that over almost any game, knowing that I can kind of watch from press row. DePaul pretty much the same way, but like I wouldn't trip. Like it's very hard for me to like convince myself to trip to UIC or Chicago State because the game isn't that relevant. It's a long trip. Like, because I'll spend 2 hours in transit for like total round trip for either UIC and maybe almost 3 hours for Chicago State. So it's like that game's irrelevant. I'm spending a lot of time in transit and I'm missing all the other games. So it doesn't become worth it unless one of them has like an especially intriguing game. So it's always a balance because you want to watch games, but there's something about being at a game, especially if it's got a good atmosphere. Like Loyola, when it's popping, is a fun place to watch a ball game.
No, I can totally see that now. I think so we're going to structure this like going through our top 25 or like a kind of general top 25 in terms of talking about this week's action. So I think first, Kevin, who do you have number one currently?
It's going to surprise some people. I still have Duke, and I'll justify it this way. The Syracuse game was fluky. Like, Duke didn't show up. It happens. It's college basketball. Duke didn't show up. Syracuse had a game plan that could bother Duke, especially given Duke was without two of its four best players. And RJ and Jack White went like 0 for 30 from 3. It happens. Like, in college basketball, that happens. And Syracuse hit a three-quarters court shot and put up 85 points on the Duke defense at Cameron. It was crazy that happened. And, like, all the credit to Cuse. And I think generally, like, my opinion that Duke is the number one team in the country has not changed because of that game. Now, if I watched them play Virginia, and those teams were razor thin margins, I think, between them. I think it's pretty fair to say Duke has more talent, and Virginia is probably might be a better basketball team right now. And so it comes right down to the margins. And so to me, Duke's my number one, Virginia's my number two. I think those are the two best teams in the country. I've watched the other teams. I just really think those are the two best teams right now, and I'm not really going to move from that.
Yeah, I'm sticking with Virginia at number one, which I've had since for a while now. They lose to Duke, but it was at Duke. It was a close enough game where, given the home court advantage, you could see Virginia winning either at neutral or at their home arena. And now they obviously have to do that, right? You can't just Duke's won the tangible outcome. We have to kind of limit these theoretical statements that can't be proven. But I think you're right that those feel like the two best teams. Maybe you could even throw Gonzaga in there as well. But I've seen a lot of love for Tennessee. Now maybe it's just they're a team where the sum of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So maybe that's kind of working against them in my brain. But they were not that impressive against Alabama. They kind of escaped that game, and
they just stopped hitting shots though. Like I'm still very high on that team. They just stopped hitting shots.
I have
the entire second half. They didn't make a thing.
Yeah, I have the number two. But in terms of number one, I would feel more comfortable with Virginia, who I am putting number one, and then Duke, who I think you mentioned that I think that they're clearly the most talented team. I have them at number three. I think that they're also a good pick for number one. But this Tennessee thing, I just don't see them as as like a legitimate option there.
I mean, if we were doing this the way the AP poll is going to do it, it's very simple. It's like who has lost least recently, and the answer to that will be Tennessee. So Tennessee will be number one, and like that's just how that poll works. But I mean, let's talk about that Duke Virginia game just a little bit. I mean, Virginia very easily could have won that game. They were right there the entire way. They just didn't hit threes. Like, how often is Virginia going to go 3 for 17 from three? I do not think a team with Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome, DeAndre Hunter, Braxton Key, Kihei Clark, like, I don't think that group is going to go 3 for 17 from three all that often.
No, I mean, even Clark, who's their least offensive player. I mean, he had a few. There was like a missed transition layup, and there was the one where he drives baseline, finds Jerome for a wide open corner three. And those are plays that Virginia normally makes, and sometimes you don't make them, and that's the difference there. But I think I feel more comfortable with Virginia being seen as a top tier team after that game, even though they lost.
Yeah, I mean, I was sold after Virginia Tech. I've been sold really the last several games just that I've watched them. I think they just look really convincing to me as an elite team, and I've been told from preseason, like, I picked them to win the league. No one picked them to win the league.
I did. No, did I? Maybe.
I mean, most people pick Duke. Is the point I'm saying? But like,
yeah.
And if they didn't, they picked North Carolina. Honestly, I mean, I will note Braxton Key starting to get it going, and that's scary. That gives them another element when he plays the 3 or the 4, and DeAndre Hunter's playing the 3 or the 4. The last, I think, it's 5 games. He's averaging 11 points, 6 rebounds on 66% for the field, 40% from 3, 86% from the line, not turning it over. Just got like a 3-to-1 assist to turnover in that span. Like, that dude's good, and he's starting to figure it out with that team and playing that role as a glue guy. I take 5 shots a game most games, and like that he's going to be valuable because, I mean, early in the year he struggled. I mean, he 0 against Wisconsin. He did nothing in that game. He was silent against Dayton. I'm trying to remember games I watched. VCU, he did nothing. So for him to be figuring out, I think that's pretty scary as well.
And I mean, he was great as a freshman at Alabama, then was hurt to start the sophomore year, couldn't really get integrated on that new team. And then he needed a waiver to play this year. And, when he got the waiver, I immediately moved Virginia up to number 2. I thought, his whole kind of archetype at Alabama was he was like a point forward type, not like a dribble the ball up the court, but like he was like a decision maker, a guy who could make plays, passing the ball. And I thought that would fit extremely well with this Virginia team. And it looks like he's starting to come around, which significantly increases their upside because they won't have to go with 2 bigs so often. Playing Giacchite, who had a rough stretch where he was just firing jumpers. I think that was the start of the second half, where he took like 3 or 4 jumpers in a row, and it's just you're just so much more dynamic offensively when you can play more of a wing at that 4 spot than pairing Giacchite and Salt. Yeah, no,
I completely buy that, and like give credit to Duke, especially without Trey Jones to go out and win this game. Now, I mean, I'm still concerned that they don't trust Jordan Goldwire to play a minute in this ball game without their starting point guard. That their backup point guard didn't play a minute, and that they just rode RJ for 40, and then O'Connell played 5. Like, they don't have any bench right now that they trust. They have Jack White, Bolden, Barrett, Reddish, Williamson. They'll play like O'Connell and Delorier a couple of minutes in a game that's big, and then Trey Jones. That's a little scary.
And I'm very surprised that O'Connell hasn't gotten more time. I didn't even notice him, the whole game. I thought Delorier was going to be a perfect fit with this group as a starting center. He's really been kind of marginalized. And I remember Coach K made a comment during the Canadian trip where he wanted to like empower the role players more. It seems like he just reverted back to playing his strong 6 or 7. But then just one other point I wanted to make on Tennessee, where they have some non-conference wins that aged pretty well. I mean, they have the Gonzaga win on neutral, which is a big marquee win, and their Louisville win is going to age a lot better. But in terms of their SEC wins, I mean, they've cleaned up against the middle and bottom. I I've seen people remarking on their margin of victory, but I mean Georgia's bottom 3, Arkansas's bottom half, Missouri's bottom half, Florida and Alabama are right in the middle. So they've yet to play the other top teams in the conference, be it Kentucky, Auburn, Mississippi State. So while I think that they're still the best team in the SEC, I think their proclaimed dominance, I think that kind of idea needs to slow down a bit.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, so are we in consensus that that's the best 3 teams in the country and that there's other teams who can play at that level? Or do you think Tennessee is more in, or is it a Duke Virginia tier and then Tennessee falls into maybe like a tier 2?
That's interesting. I'm conflicted between 2. One being what you just mentioned, with tier 1 being Virginia and Duke, and then tier 2 being Tennessee, Gonzaga, Michigan, Michigan State.
That's where I would be as well. I think that's where I'm leaning.
I could also see all 6 of those being in one tier, though. I don't think that.
I don't know. I'm trying to think on that because. So I think Duke and Virginia are consistently better than those 4, but those 4 can play at a level to play with them at any given day. Like Gonzaga beat Duke, obviously. Michigan, like when Michigan has Teskey and Simpson hitting threes, like forget about it. That what game they played against Northwestern last week was just absurd. Like Michigan State, when they're rolling with their size, like absurd. Tennessee, like when they're hitting shots with Williams and Schofield, and like Bowden's been making plays as 6-man, and Bone, like they can play with anybody in the country. But I think to me, I'm leaning tier 1, tier 2.
I think I am too, but I'm hesitant about excluding Gonzaga now that Tilly's back. They have a ton of depth. I mean, Michigan, we've seen how good they can be. Another team running an oddly tight rotation, going 7, for pretty much the whole season, even in the non-conference without redshirting guys. It's been very interesting to watch. And then Michigan State doesn't look the part in terms of their roster, but Cassius Winston is very, very good. And their auxiliary pieces have really stepped up, especially in the absence of Josh Langford. It's been really surprising, just like based on their roster, you wouldn't necessarily think that they're a top 6 team, but they just keep winning.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched a good amount of Michigan State recently, and I mean they have an All-American point guard and they have a fringe All-American big. So you got 2 guys who could be studs anywhere in the country. And then they just have guys who know their role, and they're very much a team like with Tennessee. Like the whole is better than the sum of the parts. Like Cassius and Nick Ward make the plays, but then I mean like a Kyle Arndt Kyle Arndt's like knows his role, plays a really like solid role for them. McQuaid, Xavier Tillman, people aren't talking about it, but Xavier Tillman is going to be an absolute stud next year. Xavier Tillman this year is averaging 8 points and 7.5 rebounds and 2.5 assists in 21 minutes a game on 65% from the field. He's stepping on, hitting a jumper occasionally. He's blocking almost 4 shots per 40, like over three shots per 40. Like, whoa, that guy's gonna be really good.
Yeah, I've liked him since he kind of got his cup of coffee last year. He was, they were playing like a million bigs last year, but he was always impressive in limited time. And then in terms of next year, I mean, it seems like every Big Ten team, their NBA draft decisions from like fringe guys, like Cassius Winston's or like your Charles Matthews, Jordan Poole, those guys. It seems like almost every relevant team has guys in limbo who could just say, my stock's not going to get any higher. I'm going to leave early. But if Winston returns and Ward returns, and you have all these kind of role players coming back, Michigan State will be up there for number 1.
Yeah, I mean, especially if Duke doesn't bring guys back, if Kentucky doesn't bring guys back, because neither has that like dominant class we're used to seeing. It's gonna be really interesting.
Should we move on to tier 2, or are there other things we want to talk about in the top tier?
So would top tier be 1 and 2 or 3 through 6?
Well, all right. Why don't we move to Wisconsin, Michigan?
Yes. Yes. So that game, I watched a good amount of it. I missed like the start of the second half until like 10 minutes to go, which was a very critical time because I had kind of almost abandoned it when Michigan went on that run in the end of the first half. Even though it was only a 2-point game, it felt to me like Michigan had all the control and was just going to pull away. And then it kind of changed it off, and all of a sudden Michigan is down for the entire half. What did you see in that game?
I mean, I was surprised at Iggy Brzdikis. You know, he has looked so amazing, you know, this whole year, and then, you know, to be ice cold and then compound that with the infamous intentional foul, which I saw a lot of people talking about on Twitter. And then I think Ken Pomeroy tweeted like the exact wording of the rule, and he clearly violated that. It said something to the effect of like, you can't foul someone away from the play intentionally. And I mean, he was clearly trying, like, as if it was like an NBA, like, hack a DeAndre Jordan sort of situation, where he was emphatically signaling to the referee, yes, I am fouling him, which he didn't know was against the college rule, which I didn't know either. But that really changed the game, because if Hap goes up there and misses 2 free throws, they get the ball back. You know, now we're really talking. But then Wisconsin really, you know, stepped on their throats with like that last 30-second push.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Michigan is a different team on the road than they are at home. That's just like an eye test thing. They just look fundamentally different when they're not at home. I think the confidence in their jump shots is just not the same. But that's usually like a Simpson and Teskey thing, not a Brzdikis and Charles Matthews. Like, for those guys to be silent and Michigan to, you know, really not get a ton from their bench. Like, Livers gave them 28 minutes, but he wasn't like dominant by any means. Like, he was fine. He hit that one fadeaway late. Like, for them to be in that game is kind of impressive, right? I mean, Wisconsin's been struggling. I was ready to jump off the Wisconsin bandwagon until that game. I guess now I have to stick around a little bit. And that was mostly just Ethan Happ went nuts. Like, 26, 7, and 10 is an absurd stat line. But yeah, if Matthews and Brzdikis play like that, Michigan's going to be in trouble. I thought Simpson was awesome. I mean, he's just super fun to watch. I thought Poole was good in the first half. He made some bonehead plays in the second half, like forgetting to box out, like wasn't great defensively. Yeah, really good game. I mean, great win for Wisconsin, who, if there was any doubt, I mean, there had been talk I on Twitter. I had talked a lot about Indiana being like about to fall off a cliff, because Indiana had lost 3 straight. They have like 4 or 5 on the road, starting with that Purdue game yesterday. And their one home game is, I think, Michigan, like that they could like wind up 3-8 in the Big Ten. I thought Wisconsin was kind of in a sneaky situation like that, where they'd lost 2 in a row to Purdue and Maryland. Not bad losses by any means, but, you know, close games. They'd lost the 2 before that with Western Kentucky and Minnesota. So they were, you know, I think 3-3 in the Big Ten, facing Michigan at home, on the road at Illinois, Northwestern at home, at Nebraska, home to Maryland. So like some games you could lose, especially like, I mean they probably should have corrected home court against Illinois or against Northwestern and then win at Illinois. So it wouldn't be like a complete bottom fallout, but like they could put you in a spot where their record is not very good. Obviously the Michigan win changes that.
And then, I mean, in terms of their whole body of work, I mean, they did some work in the non-conference. The Xavier win on the road is surprisingly approaching quadrant 1, I think. I think that could get in there depending on, obviously, how Xavier finishes. But, you know, I thought Xavier would be like 4-14 in the Big East. I think they're looking more like a 6-12, 7-11. So you never know if that cracks top 75. Then Oklahoma on a neutral. That really aged well. NC State at home, aging okay. I think NC State's going to be fine. At Iowa, really aged well.
Very nice win.
And then they kind of stumbled, you know, with the Western Kentucky, Minnesota, but now this Michigan win, that gives them 4 or 5 really nice wins already. So they're fine. Indiana, on the other hand, you know, they also have some good wins. Like they have Marquette at home, and they have Louisville, right? But and then Butler's okay. Northwestern's okay. But, you know, 4 straight losses. You mentioned that they could be bottoming out. And in terms of the whole fan base reaction, if they like go one and done in the tournament this year, because I think that they're still going to make the tournament. But if they go one and done,
if they lose these next 4, though, they'll have lost 8 consecutive games.
That is true. But then
and then they have after that home to Iowa, home to Ohio State, at Minnesota. Like the breaks don't come in this league. It's so tough.
And that's another thing, when the people say, teams under 500 in their league shouldn't be allowed to go to the NCAA tournament. Indiana gets Michigan twice and Michigan State twice. Okay? Not every schedule in conference is created equal. So it would be insane, if one team gets Michigan and Michigan State once and Indiana gets them both twice to penalize Indiana. But, back to, my kind of and Iowa twice. But my original stream of consciousness there. So let's say that they go one and done in the NCAA tournament. Their lineup next year, tell me if you think that this is anywhere close to an NCAA tournament team for next year. Rob Finney, Devontae Green, Aljami Durham, Justin Smith, and Trace Jackson Davis.
Yeah, no, that's trouble.
That's old Archie's going to be hearing it. And
Archie's hearing it now. Have you seen Twitter?
I know, but really hearing it, like not just.
If they don't make the tournament, I mean, he'll have a job, but it won't be good.
And maybe they get Keon Brooks for next year, but even so, experience will be lacking next year, and it could really go downhill for Archie Miller. Which, if he does get fired after 3 years, any high major team should be poised to swoop in and kind of grab him on the rebound.
Oh yeah. Well, but let's say Indiana loses at Northwestern on Tuesday. They lose at home to Michigan. Then they beat Rutgers at Rutgers. They lose at Michigan State. That's a very reasonable path. That would be they would sit at 4-7 in the Big Ten with their remaining schedule, including Iowa twice, a trip to Minnesota, Michigan State and Wisconsin at home, and home against Purdue in that final stretch. They'll also have
and home against Ohio State.
They'll have Ohio State home, Rutgers at home, and Illinois on the road as their other 3 games. So, are they getting? Because at that point, are they getting to 8 Big Ten wins? Because you can't get in an 8-12. You might be able to get in an 9-11. You're not getting in an 8-12.
I mean, it's if they go 8-12, I don't think that they will be out like definitively out, but it's not going to be in their hands. It's going to be did San Francisco end up 30-3 or 30-4? Did Gonzaga win its conference tournament? Did Nevada? Did Buffalo? Is the Pac-12 going to get 3? Which, I mean, in order to fill the field, I can see the Pac-12 getting 3 because the Big East is losing bids. The Big 12 is losing bids. It's just a big mess.
Well, I will say the other thing on Indiana, which we've really gotten off track of the top 10, but that's fine. Arkansas on the road is not a great loss by any means. They don't really have any. They've done nothing away from home. Their best away from home thing they've done all year is they won a neutral court game against Butler, who might not dance. That's where we're at. That's tough. I think Archie's going to be hearing it.
And that's why you always got to play in these holiday tournaments. I mean, the holiday tournaments are just gold mines. A brand like Indiana will have no problem getting into, a top-notch tournament, in which case, as long as you win your first game, you're probably going to get 2, at least 1, probably 2 solid win opportunities that can kind of bolster this road neutral record.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Indiana has done it to themselves. If not, you have to win some close games. At some point, you have to be able to win the at Northwesterns and the home to Nebraska. Those are games you have to win. And if they can't, then there's a reason that they're not going to be in the field if they don't get it. So we'll see. Let's not get too far off track though. So we have our top 6. We're saying Duke, Virginia, clear tier 1. Tennessee, Michigan State, Michigan, Gonzaga, tier 2. Could rise into tier 1 though. Who's your next best team and how big is that next year? I have Kentucky at 7.
Yeah, I have Nevada at 7, Kentucky at 8. I don't know what to do with Nevada.
Oh, I'm way out.
I don't. I have no idea. I mean, they're surviving. I have no faith in them in any game. You know, after almost losing to Boise State, and you know they had some horrible possessions down the stretch. Caleb Martin, you know, just firing contested jumpers repeatedly. Musselman, you know, slamming his fist against the scorer's table. It was really ugly, but his brother bails him out, and then they go and play a tight game with Air Force. I have no faith in them, but
I have them at 13 now to kind of measure where I'm at. I considered having Buffalo ahead of them. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Like their offense is just, it's not doing it. They scored 67 points against Air Force. They scored 72 against Boise. They looked bad on offense against Fresno. They just crushed them on the glass. Their offense was horrible against New Mexico before that. Like they have no shooting. They were 5 of 27 from 3 against Air Force yesterday. All of a sudden, it feels like Corey Henson is a super valuable part of this rotation, which I don't think any of us thought. Like Jordan Brown has no trust for Musselman for whatever reason. Trayshawn Thurman's fallen out to like a 7-minute-a-game player in his last game. Trey Porter is doing his thing, but they just have no shooting. Like I'm very worried. The early season shooting from Cody Martin and Jordan Caroline gave me some false hope, combined with Jazz Johnson shooting like 60% from 3 for 2 months. But I'm worried. I think this team might be like a 4 seed and then get bounced in the first round.
No, it could definitely happen. In terms of seeding, I mean, I have no idea what to do with them because their Arizona State win's not aging, and their USC win is worthless. I mean,
as long as they have the gaudy win-loss, they'll be fine.
Yeah, but yeah, we mentioned last time, you know, with Nevada and URI's resume last year, and even St. Bonaventure to an extent, you don't need a ton of quality win opportunities. You just need to win the ones that you're given. You know, like if you go 1-0 or like 2-1, you're against Quadrant 1 as like a mid-major, you're all set. So I mean, they're not going to miss the tournament, and like, you know, barring a major collapse, but they have like they don't have another, right? Because they have Colorado State, UNLV, Boise State, and then Colorado State as their next 4 games. You know, these teams aren't comparable talent levels, so I mean, Nevada can still, you know, kind of pull away in most instances, but you know, with the shooting concerns that you mentioned.
Right, we're just not going to know. Like they're going to play a bunch of teams that are not very good. Like their toughest game the rest of the way is at Utah State.
Yeah,
like we're just not going to know until March Madness what this team is, and maybe they show up, maybe they don't. But it's a really weird spot right now, and I can tell the Nevada fans are kind of angsty about it. I don't know if there's a fix. I think they might have just not recruited enough shooters, and that happens. Coaches do it. You get sucked up in the talent, and it happens. So I'm going to rattle off my next kind of several teams, Brad. So I had Kentucky at 7. I want to talk about that Auburn game in a bit. I had Texas Tech at 8. I had Kansas at 9. Note the Big 12 leader based on those polls. North Carolina at 10. Maryland up to 11. I don't know how aggressive that is compared to your ranking of them. Virginia Tech 12. Nevada 13. So that's my next 6.
Okay, so I have Nevada at 7, Kentucky at 8, and I think that's a tier for me. And
Okay.
then it just gets into just, I mean, throwing darts. I mean, I have Virginia Tech at 9. I have no confidence in that. Kansas at 10. They just don't look very good. I have Marquette at 11. I mean, they look fine. I mean, they're very, very reliant on a couple guys. UNC at 12. I mean, they have some questionable losses. And then Maryland at 13. And that would end like my tiers like 3 and 4, I guess.
Yeah, so I think Kentucky starts a new tier, and that goes, I think, until Maryland. Then I have like Virginia Tech, Nevada, Marquette, Buffalo, Auburn as a next tier. Maybe Iowa as well, if we're going like way down to 17. So if we're tiering it, I mean, the Kentucky-Auburn game was super interesting. That brings us kind of 2 teams in that next, coming group. Kentucky looked like they were going to run away early in the second half, which is when I really dove into it. I was kind of bouncing in the first half, and then the second half I really dove into that game. And then Brown just started hitting shots. Like it was fun. That atmosphere was rocking. Brown was hitting threes. I was really surprised. I mean, obviously Wiley not there is one body less, but Auburn was struggling with Kentucky's size. And, like, that's kind of one of the big appeals for me with Auburn is like that they have so many bigs, and that like the fact that they struggled as much as they did with the size and like the foul trouble was a bit concerning. I mean, Brown and Harper made plays. Harper down the stretch made some big shots, especially given how much Hagen's dogged him all night. That shot just doesn't roll in, but they could have easily come away with a win, and that would have changed kind of people's opinions. But I was very impressed by Kentucky. I thought Tyler Hero made some really, really impressive shots late in that game. I thought Emmanuel Quickley is starting to turn the corner and be a nice rotation player, made some big plays down the stretch. Hagens knows his role. PJ Washington knows his role. Keldon's making plays. Reed Travis made plays in that game. It feels like that team has a bunch of guys who know their role right now, and that's really important.
Yeah, even though I have Nevada ranked ahead of Kentucky by one spot, I think Kentucky's the closest team to kind of cracking that top tier. I just love watching Ashton Hagens. They have a solid shooting team. Hero's shooting it well now. You mentioned Quickley and Keldon Johnson really hit shots, and then their bigs are just so talented. I mean, the fit has always kind of been a question mark, but I mean, PJ Washington is I think one of the more underrated players in college basketball. In terms of Auburn, I have them ranked pretty low. I have them at 17, partly because they really haven't beaten anyone. In terms of their best wins, Washington at home, Arizona on a neutral, Dayton at home, and then Murray State at home. Which those are four like nice wins, like they're fine. But they haven't had too many tests really. In terms of road games, they lost NC State on the road, lost Ole Miss on the road, which I'm not sold on Ole Miss quite yet. Then they beat Texas A&M, which is in a complete free fall. But this week's gonna be big. I mean, they should win at South Carolina, and then they have at Mississippi State, which should be a great litmus test on Saturday night.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been unimpressed by Auburn until the second half of that game yesterday. I've been unimpressed the last several games. In that game, I mean, Brown just couldn't miss, so that's part of it. But that was a really impressive second half of basketball to watch. I think. Random note: if you didn't see my Twitter thread, everyone, I know you saw it, Brad, because you interacted. That Murray State win might be quadrant 1 for Auburn. Like, there's a very sneaky chance that gets to top 30.
Yeah, I mean, we got to track how much these, your Vermonts, your Murray States, et cetera, kind of rise in the net.
Love Vermont. The net does not love Vermont right now, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's weird because given how NC State, rose in the non-conference with their schedule, indicates that schedule isn't considered, right? Because the disparity between their net and their RPI will rise as they play this ACC schedule. But after only 4 or 5 games of ACC, NC State's still toward the back, and they have a bad ACC loss to Wake Forest, right? So I'm worried that these teams are getting overinflated, and people seem to want that. They seem to think that that's good because mid-majors have it bad, but it's inaccurate. Like,
so
it's being the outcome you want, but it's not like true.
So here's my take on this. We don't want to get into this too much because we'll be here all day. Because I can talk about it all day. Now you can too. The net to me is for most of these mid-major teams is representing where they actually are. Like, there's a few that are crazy. Like, Liberty is not a fringe top 50 team. But, like, Murray State, I think being in the 40s is about right. I think San Francisco being at 48 is about right. I think Wofford at 30 is maybe a little inflated, but they're a top 50 team. Like, the teams, those numbers are pretty much matching up with KenPom, which we all kind of accept as, like, the team. So if the net's your sorting tool, right? Even net is what we're using to sort the teams. If we're making if you're building a resume based on the wins you beat, the wins you have, you want them evaluated based on performance ratings, like a Haslametrics, like a KenPom, like the net. You don't want them evaluated based on what the resume of the other team is. I don't think it makes any sense to evaluate a win over NC State as the 112th best team in the country, which is where NC State's RPI is right now, because that's not representative of who they are. NC State is a top 40 team, which is what the net tells you it is. And so your win over NC State should be evaluated as such in terms of the quadrant system. Now, obviously, when you evaluate a team for the Big Dance, let's say NC State, that net number shouldn't be the reason you put them in. You should look at the resume. Who have you beaten? How have you beaten them? Do you have bad losses? Who'd you play in the non-conference? All of these factors. But the net as the sorting tool should be properly evaluating teams based on their performances, not based on their resumes.
No, I definitely agree with that. My only qualm and my only hesitation with the net is I think it looks fine now. But I think by the end of the year, if schedule really isn't taken into account, it's going to be skewed, because the NC State example, I think, shows that schedule's not in it, and then teams in lesser conferences have more conference games than a high major team that played a soft schedule has non-conference games, right? So you would think that there's more beating up on bad teams in there. And I don't think that should be, like, one of the things I saw was it's better because it's rewarding mid-major teams. It's not penalizing mid-major teams for things that aren't in their control, but then it's penalizing high major teams for things that aren't in their control. It's just, you just flipped it. Like, it's not any better. You just flipped who it favors.
Yeah. I buy that. I think my looking today on Twitter, I did a bunch. I think I was bored at work. I really do think the net looks good right now. It seems to be mirroring KenPom. I think most of college basketball agrees that KenPom is a pretty good way of evaluating teams in terms of sorting them. And then I think we have to trust the committee to then evaluate teams instead of just using the RPI. I think this could work. We'll see if it does work.
So what do you think the chances are that they have altered the net formula, like, during the season? Because I was talking with one of our Nevada friends. He remarked on Nevada won a game by a large margin, and they didn't move up much in the net. Or there was something with they won at Fresno State, I think, and then they didn't move up very much in the net. And I said, well, when you blow out like San Jose, Wyoming, and Air Force, you'll skyrocket. He's like, no, we only moved up 2 spots by blowing out San Jose, which got me to thinking, maybe they changed it after non-conference or something, or like they had like a pivot in there after conference play that like locked in some factors and then kind of moved it in a different direction. So
I would guess no, Brad. I think it's probably more just the fact that, like, the more data points you have, the less impactful individual games are.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, if you have 17 data points, 140-point win over San Jose State isn't going to impact your net as much as if you have 5 data points, you have 140-point win over San Jose State. But if you continually are blowing teams out, and Nevada isn't, you'll start to skyrocket. Like Murray State's resume. So the reason why I highlighted Murray State on Twitter was Murray State has no games decided no games that they've won decided by less than 10 points. They've blown out every team they've played except for Auburn and Alabama, who they lost to by 6. So they have not really a negative net result for that in terms of efficiency, but then they're blowing out teams. So their net is skyrocketing. And then their RPI sucks because they haven't played anyone. They don't have a quadrant 1 or 2, and they won't have a quadrant 1. They might have a quadrant 2.
Their best win is Wright State, I think at home too, which I think was 142 in KenPom. They have a chance to get their first top 100 win, at least in terms of KenPom. On Thursday, they have Belmont on national TV. I'm hoping to watch that game.
Excited. I'm so excited. Ja's gonna go nuts. Like, he's gonna get a 40 ball. It's gonna be fun. I think they realistically have no chance of an at-large because people are like, oh, do they have a chance of an at-large? When I was tweeting about it, so many people I was like, probably not, because they have no wins and they won't have any wins. But even the fact that they're at top 40 in net puts them in the conversation with the other teams, which matters, right? Like to me, it's a good thing that Murray State has a chance to be in the at-large conversation, even though they're not going to get in, because they actually represent one of those good teams. If you're using the net as your sorting tool, there's no discussion for Murray State. They're 80, or the RPI is your sorting tool, excuse me. They're 83 in RPI. They have no wins. They would be an NIT team, like, so clearly. With no wins and a 40 net, at least you're in that discussion. I think that's good for college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that it's. I guess it's good for college basketball. I'm not really sure of like the tangible positive impact. I know it's nice to, mid majors, drive the upset, which is a big part of the tournament. I'm not certain it really matters which mid-major teams, just like the fact that you are a mid-major. Like I don't think that it's any different, from like a macro perspective to have Murray State in versus having like UNC Greensboro or like or like Wofford. Like in Murray State has Ja Morant, obviously, and I could see a lot of people saying, oh, it would be good for Murray State to be in the tournament because they have Ja Morant. But then those same people are going to say the sub 500 high major teams can't, and they had Colin Sexton and Mo Bamba last year. So it's just obviously mid majors are needed, but I wonder if there's an oversaturation where like if there's too many, do like some of these first round games kind of or like the kind of the scarcity or like the impact of a mid-major kind of upset gets diminished.
Right. I get. Like, I'm not saying that like Wofford, Murray State, UNCG, and Murray or in San Francisco all deserve at-larges, and like to steal them all from all these like bid needy high major leagues. Like, I will generally say that like I don't know of anyone who wouldn't have preferred to watch. Like I'm trying to think of like good mid majors last year that didn't get in, like UT Arlington. St. Mary's,
Middle Tennessee, and
Rider. Sure, Rider. I think most people would have enjoyed watching those four teams play more than Syracuse, Arizona State. What was it, Vanderbilt?
No, it was Bonnie's and UCLA.
Like sure, throw Bonnie's in instead of Rider. Like I think those four teams are more appealing. Although, I mean, other people will say, most people are going to know UCLA. Like. I think most people would prefer to see those teams rewarded. Like no one's going to be heartbroken to see Arizona State not get in last year. Like this is like way off topic, but like, yeah, it's tough. I think the point being like, I want the teams who are very good teams who don't get the chances to win big games. Like Murray State had two chances, both on the road, both against top 40 teams, one against a top 20 team. And they were within 5 in both, or within 6 in both of those games. But like, they're not going to get a shot. More than likely, they would have no shot with the RPI. I think they have a small shot with the net. That's my take. That's a good thing for basketball.
I've had this position now for a while that the playing games should just be the top 2 mid majors that didn't get at large or that didn't win the conference tournament versus 2 Power 5. So it would be last year. It could be like Arizona State and Middle Tennessee, and then St. Bonnie's in UCLA. That's perfect. Right, so you have like this like David versus Goliath setup, because I think if a playing game was like San Francisco and Murray State, I don't think anyone's watching.
Fair.
I don't think that's going to differentiate from those 16 playing games. Certainly not to the casual viewer, but I mean even to like a casual college basketball fan, I'm not sure that really moves the needle. Whereas I think if we can get this David Goliath set up, and it doesn't have to be brands as big as UCLA, but even like for this year, if we had like Alabama versus San Francisco, I think that would be a very compelling matchup.
I'm here for it. Let's get it done. Let's call the NCAA. I'll be on line 1 after we finish the podcast. Let's circle back. Let's circle back. We had some fun. We were kind of talking about the middle tiers of the top 25. So a few teams in that mix that I think are worth touching on. Maryland, I think, is a big one. So I have them at 11. You said you have them at 13, Brad.
Yep.
They just keep winning. And I was mentioning this the other day, like Seton Hall is like the biggest winner in this because Seton Hall has now lost twice to DePaul, is under 500 in the Big East, and has virtually no chance of missing the NCAA tournament by virtue of likely having 2 top 10 wins, one on a neutral and one on the road.
And then their Louisville and St. Louis losses are aging.
Yep.
The Miami win is not aging. But then what was their other loss? Other loss, was Nebraska.
Yeah.
On the road, which is aging.
Perfect. Yeah.
So I mean, if you're a Seton Hall fan, though, you just have to be kicking yourself because two wins versus DePaul, and you're sitting at 5-2 in the league with those, non-conference wins as you mentioned. This is a top 25 team. This team's pushing for like a top 5, like a 4 or 5 seed. But now it looks like they're probably going to be in that 9 or 10 range probably by the end of the season.
Yeah, I was thinking 8-9.
I was
they were rebound.
People were asking me, what does Providence need for a record to get at large? And I think Providence, Xavier, Georgetown, DePaul need to go 12-6 or have like a nice Big East tournament run. I think Marquette and Seton Hall could go 10-8, maybe even 9-9 for both of them.
Yeah,
and everyone else needs 11-7.
Fair. Yeah, I'll buy that. But I mean Maryland, where are we? Because they open the year, they're not very impressive against Delaware or Navy. They let Hofstra hang around, but turned out to be a very good Hofstra team. Then everything kind of accumulates to a Virginia game at home that they push Virginia the entire way. People are like, oh, it's a road game, Virginia, no big deal. Maryland struggles with Penn State, but wins at home, loses on the road to Purdue by 2 at Mackey. That could have been a game they could have won. They handle Loyola Chicago. Then they have the Seton Hall loss. They beat Radford. And then they just start rolling. They beat Nebraska at home by 2 points in the game that we talked about on this podcast, and neither of us were very impressed by either team. Then they handle Rutgers on the road. They handle business at Minnesota big. They win at Indiana at home against Indiana by 3, at home against Wisconsin by 4. Then they blow out Ohio State. On Friday night. They were in control that entire way. How much are we buying in, Brad? Because I'm very in on this team. I mean, none of those games are absurdly hard. What's the toughest game in that Big Ten stretch that they've just rattled off?
Probably at Ohio State.
At Ohio State.
Home Nebraska.
Home to Nebraska. Home to Wisconsin. None of those are hard games. It's the epitome of all these 50-50 games in the Big Ten. Even Rutgers, I think, is a somewhat 50-50 game on the road. They can compete with you. Northwestern saw it. Although Northwestern was blowing out Rutgers in every minute where Barrett Benson and Derek Pardon weren't playing next to each other. But Chris Collins nearly single-handedly destroyed that game. Side note, Chris Collins, if you're listening, don't ever do that again. Barrett Benson and Derek Pardon were minus 15 when on the floor together in 17 minutes. The rest of the way, Northwestern was plus 23. How do you watch a game and keep putting out that lineup knowing that you're getting killed by Rutger and the rest of the time you're dominating them?
Or I mean, for my Providence complaint of the week, they changed the Seton Hall game with a lineup of Ashton Langford, White, Duke, Diallo, and then they switched off Watson and Young. They used that lineup 0 times against Marquette. And I had a Marquette fan say, well, Marquette's a lot better than Seton Hall. I said, well, that was our one effective lineup against Seton Hall. You didn't even try it against Marquette. He said, no, it's not going to work. And I said, well, then what's your solution then? And he said, get better guards. Oh, that's a great solution mid-season. Let's pack it up and get better guards. It's like if you were a business consultant and the business, all right, we hired you a consultant. What should we do? And the guy goes, well, make more money. I was like, thanks. We need better guards. No shit. That was unbelievable. But back to Maryland.
I was screaming at the TV during Rutgers Northwestern. But yeah, back to Maryland. They've won all these 50-50 games in a row. How much do we buy that as a long-term thing, or is this just a good stretch?
This Maryland team kind of reminds me of the Providence team with Chris Dunn and Ben Bentel, where they had these 2 very good players, and now Maryland has your Jalen Smith and stuff, but Providence had had some role players who were producing too. And they got up to like 8th in the country, where like they were just winning all these 50-50 games. Like they beat Arizona, they beat Butler on the road, and then they just kept rolling. And all of a sudden, the bottom just fell out. So I am weary of that with this Maryland team, but I mean, the schedule certainly gets tougher. So even if they do take losses, they won't necessarily bottom out. But I think they're probably going to end up being a top 20 team, which I was wrong probably, but shoot or shoot.
Yeah, I mean, you had an opinion. It was a very fair opinion. It hasn't worked out, and that's okay, Brad. Like, it was a well-informed opinion. It just didn't work out. I mean, Cowan's been awesome. Bruno Fernando has been awesome. And Jalen Smith's been better than I think we both thought. Ayala and Wiggins combined are giving them 53 minutes a game, 18 points, shooting like 40+% from three between the two of them. I don't think we expected that combo to be that productive. Morcell's been very solid as like a role player. Still can't shoot though. And then they're getting like a little bit from Sorrell Smith and Ricky Linden. I mean, it's the best case scenario for this team. And yeah, we'll see if they can continue to rattle it off. They even if they lose to Michigan State, they should win at home against Illinois Northwestern. Then they have 2 road games in a row that'll be tough. They have a really tough 5-game stretch where they go road Wisconsin, road Nebraska, home Purdue, at Michigan, at Iowa. If they can win like 3 of those games, they'll be a top 15 team.
Absolutely. I mean, that is a brutal stretch with a home game against Purdue in the middle and then a home game against Ohio State after.
Yeah. And
then last 3 they have at Penn State, home Michigan. So I mean, this is a brutal slate down the stretch.
And I will just like generally say part of my bullishness on Maryland at 11 is like just a lack of confidence in everybody else.
Oh yeah, it's as to why I have Marquette 11, like for an explanation, or like Virginia Tech 9, it's just by default. Like it's all relative, and teams in my next tier below, I'm certainly not sold on. Like a Buffalo, Texas Tech, Nebraska, Auburn. It's probably my next tier there. We have teams like a Nebraska, who I think 16 is about right. I think that they're playing well, but I think this is ultimately the correct spot for them. I think Texas Tech could even fall a bit lower. They had been kind of exceeding their talent level, and then as long as Buffalo can stay head and shoulders talent level above the rest of the conference, I mean they should stay in this range as well.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm so bullish on Texas Tech. I just trust their defense in a range where I don't trust anyone else. The losses this week are ugly, but I'm still kind of rolling. I mean, yeah, let's going to start getting the back half of this. So I had Iowa at 17, Houston at 18, Nebraska at 19. I think Iowa's very good. The more I watch Wieskamp, the more I'm impressed. He's only getting better. I think he was 8 for 8 from the field today for like 25 points. Now this has been a 4-game stretch against, the stretch you have to do work on. A 5-game stretch that they've won in a row. You have to do work on if you're in the Big Ten. Home to Nebraska, that's a 50-50 home game. Those are the games you have to win if you want to like be a top 25 team. Then road at Northwestern, that's a 50-50 game on the road, especially without Tyler Cook. They won that game. Very impressive in that game, especially without Cook. Ohio State at home, another 50-50 game at home you got to win. At Penn State, bad team. Home to Illinois, bad team. They win them. Like they've won the games they should, and so they're starting to rise, and they don't have a gauntlet left. I think they have a fair number. Like all their toughest games are at home. So they have Michigan State at home, Michigan at home. They have Maryland at home, Indiana at home. Their toughest road game left is either in a trip to Assembly Hall or back-to-back Wisconsin and Nebraska to end the year.
Yeah, I would say probably at Nebraska is probably the toughest. But I mean, that next 4 games is really going to be like the major litmus test for Iowa, where it's home Michigan State, at Minnesota, home Michigan, at Indiana. If they can split, I mean they're in amazing shape going forward. I
mean they're in. I don't think that's any doubt. 16-3, a lot of Big Ten wins. they don't really have anything to show for their non-con, but I don't think it will matter. Like their win-loss record at this point is almost a lock to be good enough for them to be fine, you know?
But like in terms of like 50-50 games, I mean, I think that they have enough home games to avoid this kind of doomsday scenario. But like if they only win home Northwestern and then sweep Rutgers, that would put them 8-12. And like it's not like
that. I like this team too much for them to only do that.
But like, so that's like the doomsday, right? So then you mentioned they're a road slate. I mean, at Minnesota is probably the next easiest game. But then you have at Indiana, at Ohio State, at Wisconsin, at Nebraska.
They should win at home against Indiana, who's bad.
All right, so then home Indiana, home Maryland, home Michigan State. I mean, those are all. That's 3 top 15 teams in Indiana, which I think it's going to be a coin flip game. So
right. Okay,
could happen. There are enough coin flips in Iowa's remaining schedule that the odds are that they just win one.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I guess my thing is like we're talking about Indiana, like maybe it's just like where we were on them to start the year, but like what makes Indiana definitively better than Northwestern at this point? Like what have they done to state that they're better than Northwestern? They beat Marquette.
They blew out Marquette.
They blew out Marquette at home in the 3rd game of the year. Like that's all they have on their resume that like matters to me. Like they beat Louisville at home by 1. Northwestern lost by 2 to Michigan at home. They played Indiana, Northwestern, Michigan, and Indiana played on Indiana's court out of the 2-point game. Like I'm not saying Northwestern's better than Indiana. I don't know if they are. I literally have no idea. We'll see on Tuesday. But like I guess it's just kind of like no one considers Northwestern a tournament team right now, and I don't necessarily think they should. Like I'm not saying like everyone should be lined up and saying Northwestern should be in the tournament. Like I don't think they should be unless they beat Indiana and then like really start rolling. But like, what's really to say based on what they've done so far in terms of performance? I mean, Northwestern just hasn't closed games, and that's fine. But like just like eye test wise, I don't see that there's a big difference.
No, Arkansas and Fresno State cancel out. It's really just that Marquette game,
which happened the 3rd game of the year, which is why every game matters. Like that, you never know what win is going to age like crazy. That might be the age of the year win.
And then, I mean, like last year, like going in the complete opposite direction, Providence loses at home to Minnesota on the 4th day of the season, and that ends up being a sub 100 loss when they were at the time with Reggie Lynch and Amir Coffey. That's a top 15 team.
Yeah.
But talk about the bottom falling out.
Crazy. What's like the back 5 of your top 25?
Well, so I have one other tier of 3 teams that I have 18 to 20. That's Louisville, Villanova, and Purdue. Teams that sometimes are impressive, most of the time not that impressive, but they're just getting it done. And then the back 5, I mean, this is just a complete cluster from 20 to like 32. I have Wisconsin at 21, Oklahoma at 22, Iowa at 23, Iowa State at 24, and Houston at 25. And so basically, it's just a big chain where, right, Purdue beats Wisconsin, Wisconsin beat Oklahoma and Iowa, Iowa beat Iowa State, and that's my chain. And then Houston has the nice record; they haven't beaten anybody. They have LSU at home. I think that's it for them. We talked about this a couple weeks ago that they have a couple okay wins. Like the Oregon win's not the Oregon win might age a little bit, but not enough to be relevant. Oklahoma State lost half their team. St. Louis at home is okay. Utah State at home is not aging well. And then they're one of their few chances to get like a meaningful win in conference at Temple, they drop. So now, in terms of building their position, they have at Central Florida and at Cincinnati. That's it.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting. I mean, they don't have. I think they'll be fine, but just in terms of their win-loss record. But we'll see what happens. My back half, I have Villanova at 20. I have Purdue at 21, Wisconsin at 22, Mississippi State at 23. I'm thinking Louisville at 24. 25, I really wanted to just do like the Seth Davis toss in a mid-major. which I don't always
Don't do
do
that.
like Seth Davis does.
Don't do that.
I
No.
do it. I do it. So I've done it on the ballot a couple of times this year in the American 25 when I run out of teams to put. When I'm like, I am just so unenthused by all these teams that I'm gonna like throw a courtesy vote to Murray State or whoever, because I really don't think the gap is very large. Like for instance, like NC State for a while, like after losing to Wake, like do we really feel that much stronger about NC State after losing to Wake Forest? I mean, Wake Forest lost to Houston Baptist. If you changed out Wake Forest's name for like insert bad mid-major here, everyone would like be killing NC State for losing that game. But because they lost to Wake Forest, it's road conference games are hard. It happens. Wake Forest lost by 20 to the 8th best team in the A10. Wake Forest lost by 10 to Richmond, who's terrible. They lost to Houston Baptist. They lost by 4 to Gardner-Webb. They got handled by Georgia Tech. They're not a good basketball team in any regard. Like, I don't care. So that's a terrible loss. So I guess, but I don't know. Like I guess that's my take on NC State right now. It's just I'm like very unenthused because of that loss, and they really haven't played that well for several weeks. I think Iowa State's my 25th team. Sorry Murray State. Sorry San Francisco. Sorry Wofford. Couldn't sneak in this time.
Yeah, I moved NC State into my like queue. Right? Like I'm keeping an eye on them, but in terms of LSU is going to rattle off.
I thought about LSU. They're 15th in net. They're like 8th in the RBI. Like their KenPom is good. I'm trying to find their KenPom. I remember it being good though. They're 24th in KenPom. I think the numbers are really like I think people kind of forgot about them just because they're they had that tough stretch where they lost to
Florida State, Oklahoma State, and
that Oklahoma State loss is terrible.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State is terrible. They just missed like half their team the other day. Like they waved the white flag on that one. But
yeah. I mean, they don't have a ton of wins. It's at Ole Miss, but then like if you don't like Ole Miss, which I'm definitely in a wait and see mode with Ole Miss. Their resume is just kind of like Houston's, where there's like St. Mary's, there's Furman, there's Alabama, there's College Charleston, but there's just not a ton of like meaning there. And then another team, or two other teams that I'm considering, Kansas State, which has really turned things around. And then I moved Florida State out. I still think that they're good enough to get back in, but I think for now you have to keep them out.
Yeah, that's fair. I would tend to agree with that. I'm trying to read some other top 25s that I've seen and see if we're missing anyone that we should touch on. The only thing I wanted to touch on personally was Jalen Fisher, TCU.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I thought that was an interesting topic before we wrap it all up today. Was that Jalen Fisher, like, it was a little weird to me that, Uataloke and I think like Angus McWilliams and Caden Archie were leaving TCU. I was like, 3 guys who were like playing a little, not like a ton, but they were playing minutes on a tournament team, leaving midseason. This seems a little weird. And then Jalen Fisher leaves. Like, they're one of their stars, like a guy who's been there from the beginning with Jamie Dixon, what he's building. Like, what is going on? Because, I mean, Kawhi Noy's hurt now. I don't know if you saw that. I don't know how long
I did not.
He was out. He missed their last game. Like, they're running out of bodies, first and foremost. There's something going on chemistry-wise that Jalen Fisher decided to up and leave mid-season. I mean, and he's had multiple knee injuries. He's going to go sit out this year and then transfer, sit out another year. I guess he's thinking to get a waiver because he has a redshirt year. He'll probably get a waiver, play right away, play 2 years somewhere else. I don't get it. I guess maybe he just didn't like getting moved off the ball. But it's weird. I mean, Jamie Dixon went from let's talk about him at UCLA to like maybe kind of the dark side of the pit stuff.
Yeah, because talk about a team with nothing of substance. I mean, their best win is Fresno State.
Good team, not a great team.
At home, right?
Yeah.
At SMU is nothing. USC obviously nothing, even though they blew them out. And then it's so shocking that Fisher left. I mean, he's up there with some of the most shocking departures. Mostly though of guys that it was like, I think he's going pro, and then he decides to transfer like a Nigel Williams-Goss or like a Yurt Seven or Dietrich Lawson. But I mean, he's up there. Like another surprising guy for me was like Mario Kegler, because I thought Mississippi State had enough pieces with him to put it together. But they hadn't put it together yet. TCU was a 6th seed last year, and Fisher was the best player. And now, maybe Kenrich Williams, but Fisher was a face of the program. He's an excellent player, and to just leave it is just
right.
What
thing is mid-season, like when I saw I woke up to a text that was like Jalen Fisher's leaving TCU. Like he didn't say he's transferring, and I was like, oh, he's going pro. Like that makes sense. Like he's had all these knee injuries. Like he doesn't want to spend his time like getting hurt. He wants to go get a bag. Like that's fine. And then it's like he's transferring. I was floored. I mean, I don't remember the last time a like bordering on star player on a tournament team just up and left mid-season at a high major. Like I can't think of it. Can you?
No, it feels like there's more mid-season guys leaving this season. But the first name that came to mind was Isaac Fleming on that really good Hawaii team.
Yes.
It wasn't mid-season. It was like the end of the season, and it was like February, and he just bailed and left for East Carolina. But side note, that was a very good Hawaii team.
Very good Hawaii team. They played
Stefan Jankovic.
That team was so fun.
Yeah, that was an excellent team.
And they beat that Cal team with Jalen Brown and Konzo.
Yep, with Tyrone Wallace was hurt.
Yeah, Jabari Bird had back spasms and couldn't play. And like Hawaii was favored in Vegas in that game because how many guys were out for Cal.
In terms of a Jalen Fisher landing spot, teams that could use a point guard for next year. I mean, Louisville, that would be a great fit. They could go Fisher, obviously health and waiver pending, but Fisher, Perry, Nwora, Sutton, Enoch. It's just plug in Fisher for Kristen Cunningham.
I'm very interested to see what happens. Like, I mean, he has had 6 surgeries in the last 3 years, and 3 surgeries on his right knee in the last 12 months. That's pretty scary, right? I mean, like,
here's one.
Obviously, someone's going to take him, but I mean,
here's one. Duke. You go Jalen Fisher. You guys, Alex O'Connell, Jack White, Vernon Carey, Marcus Bolden, with Ellis Moore, Joey Baker, and Delorier.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, he could fit anywhere as like a starting point guard if he's healthy. I don't know, like, is that his goal? Like, it's just so random. Like, if he wanted to transfer up and go ball somewhere else, he could do that, and he could have done it last offseason. Like, I'm just so confused by the timing.
In the preseason, I mean, TCU was a top 20 team, and they looked the part really, and without the wins, but in terms of performance. And so, Fisher gets hurt, and now that I don't think that they're going to make the tournament anymore. I think that they're probably going to bottom out. But TCU was really headed in the right direction, but now, I mean, it's looking really, really dicey there.
Someone was like, "Oh, I saw a tweet that was like, it was so wrong. Like it totally does not understand the whole like timing of it." But I thought it was funny. Anyways, like, yeah, Jalen Fisher is going to. He got told by Jamie Dixon that Jamie Dixon is taking the UCLA job, so he's transferring now, so he can go to UCLA and play there and have 2 years with Jamie Dixon. And I was like, yeah, that just is not it. Like in the but
probably not. Probably not.
I mean, I'm really trying to figure out where he's gonna go. Like, there's been no buzz yet. I mean, it's been early.
He's from Memphis, right?
I think so. He was recruited. Oh, that could fit. That would work.
But I mean, they have Lomax and Harris too, though. Which, I mean, you obviously take Fisher, but
I would take Fisher over Lomax and Harris anyway, and just move one off the ball.
Yeah, so would I. But I'm saying, just like in terms of there are other spots who like desperately need a point guard who are, huge brands.
Sure. We'll see. It's gonna be very interesting. I mean, that was flooring to see him leave. I know you agree. Anything else on this pod, Brad?
Isaiah Stewart.
Yes.
To Washington.
Good call. Very good call. That was one of those like super anticlimactic announcements, where everyone had announced, like everyone and their brother had been saying it was Washington. So I didn't even need to watch the announcement. I just waited for the tweets, and you could tell that everyone knew because all the stories were pre-written for Washington. Everyone was prepared to just pop out the tweet with the full long article that Isaiah Stewart was going to Washington. That's very big, especially if they can get McDaniels. I mean, that would be a very scary core.
So next year, once Quade Green's eligible, it'll be Quade Green, Jalen Noel, Naz Carter, Hamir Wright, and Isaiah Stewart, and then if they get McDaniels, sub in McDaniels for Wright. And
Hamir is super offensively challenged right now. I don't know. He's shooting like 30% from the field, but like I love Hamir. Hamir, he's like from my area and stuff. Like I think he's a really good defensive player. I just don't know what he did. Like I think he's like a 5 realistically in college. Like he's like a defensive 5, like as a rim protector, who's just like really can't do anything because he's too skinny and like can't shoot. Like he's like how many big men are shooting 25% from the field on 4 attempts a game? And like he's taking almost half of those from 3, but he's 17% from 3. So he's just hurling it up and not making them.
Hey, I mean, he's on the big time Pac-12 favorites.
Oh yeah. 3-bit Pac-12, baby. And with that, I think we can sign off, right, Brad? I don't want to talk about the Pac-12. Great episode. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you have any more thoughts for that, for us about Jalen Fisher, about our top 25s, we'll have our full ones out with the Rockin' 25 every week as we always do. Stay tuned for those. I might write something about my RPI net talk that I brought on Twitter if I have some time. We'll see. It's a busy time of year. Hoops, school, etc. Go Cats. Go Siena. Go Providence. Providence is screwed though, Brad. Sorry. We'll sign off with that one.